In 2011, NASA launched their Mars Curiosity rover with the intention to see if Mars was ever habitable and could support life. Now, the rover weighs over 2,000 pounds and is the size of an SUV, so how were we able to land such a massive vehicle on the surface of Mars, where it takes 14 minutes to receive a signal from? Now, it takes 7 minutes for the rover to reach from the upper atmosphere down to planetside, and what this means is when we receive the signal that the rover has entered the atmosphere, it will have been on the planet for 7 minutes, alive or smashed to bits. Now, the 7-minute descent, known as EDL, entry, descent, landing, has to go off perfectly, without a hitch, and without any direct input from humans. So what this entails is perfect choreography. One tiny mistake, one error in the code happens, it's done. The rover is smashed to bits, and $2.5 billion and years of work are thrown out the window. These 7 minutes have become known as the 7 minutes of terror. So EDL, entry, descent, landing. That means going into the atmosphere, the pod is going 13,000 miles per hour. So it has to go from 13,000 miles per hour to 0 miles per hour over the course of 7 minutes. Now when it first enters the atmosphere, it starts picking up drag. Not enough drag, keep in mind, because Mars' atmosphere is about 100 times thinner than Earth's. But what happens is the heat shield starts to heat up on the pod to about 16,000 degrees. That's 1.5 times hotter than this flame. Ow! Ugh. Then the pod uses small thrusters to course correct. Once the pod is slowed down to about 1,000 miles per hour, now you might be asking yourself, how fast is 1,000 miles per hour? Well, let me show you. Oh gosh. Why did I think that'd be a good sight gag? A parachute is deployed. To be more specific, a supersonic parachute. The biggest one NASA had ever made up to that point, able to withstand 65,000 pounds of force, which is pretty impressive when you consider the measly thing only weighed about 100 pounds. When that parachute deploys, it's exhibiting 9 Gs of force onto that pod. For reference, most people can only withstand about 4 to 6 Gs, with some fighter pilots able to withstand 9 Gs only for a second or two. The next step is getting rid of that pesky heat shield. And let me tell you, it did come in handy up in the upper atmosphere, but right now it's blocking the radar systems. So how is the rover supposed to be able to tell how fast it's going and where it's going to land? The parachute was able to slow the pod down to about 200 miles per hour, which is not slow enough to land. For reference, 200 miles per hour is this fast. Whew, wow, that was pretty quick. So at this point, the engineers decided to drop the rover out of the parachute and use rockets for the final descent. However, when turning on the rockets, they have to make a very sharp maneuver around the parachute, otherwise they would collide. This also stops the rover's vertical velocity, making it so the rover is just going straight up and down. At this point, the rover is using radar to survey the ground to decide where to land. Boom! Now the rover was supposed to land in Gall Crater, which is next to Mount Sharp, which is 6 kilometers high. That's pretty tall. Another problem that the designers had to deal with was that they couldn't land the rover using jets, because they would stir up the Martian dust too much, which would then settle on top of the rover, potentially causing damage. So, they came up with the sky crane maneuver. 20 meters above the surface, the rover is lowered down on suspension cables, while the rocket chassis stays in place, perfectly suspended. Once the rover touches the ground, the suspension cables are cut, and the flyaway part does what it says and flies away. The reason for that is, well, multiple reasons. A, you don't want that descent stage falling on top of the rover, that's no good. But also, you don't want the rockets, like I said before, stirring up all that Martian dust. So it flies away as fast as it can. Well, at this point, we already know the Martian rover Curiosity landed successfully, and since then has been sending back incredible images and information about the Martian landscape. But boy, let me tell you, I can't imagine how stressful it must have been in that command center that day during those 7 minutes of terror.